So hi everybody, thanks again for joining another of the Barbados SEO calls. And today we've got someone really, really cool. We've got Nick Wilsdon with us. He's the CEO and founder of Torque, and he's got a really cool talk about that he's going to be delivering at Barbados, but we're going to talk about that later. So first of all, thank you for joining us, Nick.
Yeah, I'm very glad to be here. No, thank you very much for inviting me.
And I'm going to ask you what I ask everybody as a first question. How did you get started in SEO?
Oh, that was a very long time ago. I think it was around 1999 I first started, and I joined a small development company, and they were obviously making websites, which was great fun. So I was learning HTML, but we also had an HTML editor, which we promoted. So the idea was that we would well, they wanted to get more downloads effectively of this HTML editor. So it was a really good chance for me to kind of learn how to write HTML, but then also create a site and promote this product. And we would do a lot of the older tricks like create review sites, affiliate sites, and try and get more downloads. So it was a really good way of learning SEO effectively because we had a conversion at the end of it. So it was a very functional way of learning SEO.
Do you think that I'm guessing the answer is going to be yes, but I'm going to ask this anyway. Do you think the industry has changed a lot in more than 20 years that you've been in it?
Oh yeah, huge amount. Yeah, absolutely huge amount. And it's great because it's become more professional. It's become more of a proper professional discipline, really, being an SEO. And I think when we first started, it was a little bit experimental, and we were kind of pioneers, and it was quite scrappy. It was fun, but it's been interesting watching it become more respected, especially at kind of enterprise level, where it's like a respected channel now that's bringing in huge amounts of money for companies. So I've quite enjoyed seeing the creation of an entirely new industry. Absolutely, but it has changed enormously.
Mhm.
Every few years, really, it evolves, and that's
Yeah.
quite a challenge to keep up with that.
I guess is that one of the things that makes the industry interesting for someone who's been in it for more than 2 decades?
Yes, you have to love learning new things. And you have to love learning. I think that essentially describes every good older SEO. You can't uh, sit on your laurels effectively with what you've learned in previous years or decades. I mean, some of that background information is very useful and it gives you a base of understanding, but you have to keep evolving and you have to keep learning how to do things in the way that works for Google and the search landscape now. And we've seen this, with we can describe so many new things that happen every year, and I think the last few years especially have been quite eventful with AI coming out, new forms of technical SEO, ways of doing content. These are all kind of game changers, really. So yeah, you have to love learning, I think, to stay in SEO. But if you've got an inquisitive mind, if you enjoy discovering something new and pioneering, then SEO is a fantastic industry to be in.
hmm Do you think it's easier these days to be an SEO than it was before?
Uh, yeah, that's quite a tricky question. I think it's easier in some respects because it's more structured, so you know what to learn. Um, I think it's harder in the sense that it's such a broad church, SEO. So I think it's the amount of knowledge out there, I think, is quite daunting sometimes for new SEOs. And I've often argued that I think SEO as a discipline is almost too large now. I think it covers too many areas. You can be an SEO who specializes in content, in distribution, in reach. You can be an SEO who specializes in technical SEO, in sort of Ajax-driven sites, and that's a huge breadth of knowledge to have. And I think in some respects that's made it quite tricky. I think agencies and especially who are kind of doing such a big job in training the new generations of SEO should really kind of work on enabling new SEOs to kind of drill down and become specialists in each particular part of SEO rather than sort of create lots of generalists.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you're mentioning that because I think you're not the first person that I've had on these talks that has mentioned the fact that people need to specialize because of the sheer broadness of SEO, and it encompasses so many things that it's really, really difficult to be a true expert in something when you have to dip in too many things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a real challenge for the new SEOs because they're always going to feel they're spread too thin, and they're always going to feel like they don't really have the depth of knowledge that they should have. And I've always said to people starting off, build a grounding in a particular area, really go deep, learn it, establish your credibility and expertise, and then start to branch out into different areas. because I think that's the only way to learn. But it can be quite daunting, I think, for people coming into the industry. And if you take that back to when we first started, myself, Martin, some of the older, more elderly people in the SEO industry, Martin will appreciate that. We had forums that encompassed everything. We had forums where we could talk about every aspect of SEO. It was that small. We would just start different threads. It was there was less to know, effectively. So yeah, I think that is a challenge for new SEOs.
I think it's also the fact that it changes so much that you have to, it sort of forces you to be up to date with everything all the time.
Yeah, and the speed. I mean, that's why it's so good to get that deep expertise into one particular area. So you create an anchor, and then you can, as things change, you can still develop and update yourself within those areas, because you can't keep up with every aspect of SEO. I think if I look at my career, and I've worked as a technical SEO, I've worked as a content-driven SEO. I'm not up to date on everything related to content at the moment, and I don't think you can be. Certainly, I don't do any outreach really now. I've not done outreach for a few years now. So yeah, I think it's difficult to maintain that expertise in every area. It's almost impossible, basically.
So what would you say are the most reliable sort of sources of information for someone wanting to get started?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you have to know the kind of SEO that you want to do. Again, because we have that breadth in terms of different areas within SEO. We also have a big difference between the kind of clients that you deal with. The kind of SEO you do for a smaller website is completely different from the kind of SEO you do for an enterprise website. So I think that you have to first work out the kind of clients and the kind of area that you want to go into, because it does really, it's a huge difference between them. And to give you a practical example of that, with an enterprise level website, it's very large and you can go into a lot of depth in terms of technical problems. And that's quite fun if you're a technical SEO, because you can really dive into it. You can do every aspect of parameters, dealing with parameters, there's a lot of very in-depth SEO you can do, but that would never make sense for a smaller website, because it wouldn't provide value for money to do a sort of 2 or 3 week investigation into one of these areas. So you have to know kind of what kind of clients you're working with. When you've established the kind of SEO you're doing, whether it's small client, SME, affiliate, enterprise, then find the experts in that area. I would say, I love a lot of the stuff Aleda does. I think she's brilliant, and learningseo.io is a fantastic resource. So I'd definitely recommend starting there, and that will give you an idea of the different parts of the SEO industry that you want to get into.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, you're not the first one mentioning Aleda's resource, and she talked very extensively about that one. So
yeah, I think she contributes a huge amount to the industry, and I think very appreciative for the amount of effort she puts back into that. But you've got to find authors that you trust and that produce reliably good information, and I'd say Aleda's one of those. But yeah, I think and also you keep up with Barry and Rusty Brick and some of the main news story sources. They're all very good. Search engine land. So yeah, I think keeping up with that, and obviously Google increasingly puts out a lot of good information. And I think again that's one of the differences between how SEO works now and how it used to work in the past. We have a lot more communication from Google, especially around technical SEO, and it's worth kind of really diving into everything they produce.
There's also like more openness and on like all the algorithms that they are releasing like constantly, and how these are more frequent. Like an algorithm would used to be something that used to be released like every now and then, and now they do changes to it like almost on a daily basis.
Almost all the time, yeah, exactly. And we have these we have core updates, but you're right, there's a huge number of changes that happen, and they're much better now at conveying that to us and letting us know kind of what we should be focusing on, what we should be changing. So yeah, I do appreciate that kind of higher level of communication, and especially from people like John Mueller, who are absolute saints when it comes to their dealing with the SEO industry. And I think the amount of effort that they put in is sometimes not really appreciated by people.
Yeah, and talking about the comms, you were saying like how the industry and people who've been for a very long time in the industry, that they communicate and they're very open about the things they're trying and the changes and all that. Is that one of the best things in the industry?
Yes, yeah, and I think people are more open to discussing tactics now, and I think that's also reflects how SEO's changed, because we used to you would find a trick. Effectively, you'd find something that worked, like a silver bullet. Everyone would keep very quiet about this. They'd all jump on this, and then that's why you wouldn't publicize it, because it was
Hmm.
that knowledge gave you the advantage, and you kind of tried to keep ahead of the algorithm in that way by trying to find the vulnerabilities that Google had. SEO has changed now. It's a long-term game, and a lot of what we do isn't actually that complicated. The complication comes from how we're going to actually deploy these things. So how do we make these changes? And I think
Yeah.
that's largely why I got into Edge, effectively, sort of bring it around to Edge, because it's about getting things done and getting them done in a way that's sort of faster and more effective, because it's deploying and shipping SEO changes is a real challenge for me.
Hmm. And now that you mentioned, your talk at Barbados is going to be lessons and case studies from an edge solutions architect. For anyone listening that doesn't know what an edge solution architect does, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I always wanted to be an engineer, to be honest. So I think when you're an SEO, you kind of always want to have a more engineer-driven job. And I think the way well, first of all, I'll explain what Edge is. So we have CDNs, content
Mhm.
distribution networks, and we have Akamai. Everyone will know Cloudflare, Fastly, CloudFront. These are kind of the main CDNs that are out there. What's happened is their main purpose was to distribute content. So if I came in, say, I was accessing a website in Mumbai and the servers were in California, I would want to access a really fast copy of that content. I'd want to access it sort of locally in a much more efficient way. Now, as that network has improved over time, because computers do, we have more, more capacity, more RAM, more compute. We're able to do more in that layer, not just serve content. We're able to manipulate the requests. We're able to run JavaScript. We're able to have database structures. We're able to connect to other services via API and pull in data to manipulate the requests. And that gives us a huge amount of power in terms of changing things on a website. So a solutions architect really understands the architecture really around that, and how to employ that for clients. So I'm really kind of finding solutions really to common, well, not common, usually bespoke problems that clients have, but using Edge architecture to solve these issues.
Hmm. And could you give an example of like one problem that most companies may be facing with that, something that's very common?
Yeah, I'd say one problem would be forward rewriting, which is so this is a function that we have in Edge, and we used to. So what we can do with this function is a request comes in for page A, and we serve page B, but it gets served under page A under the same URL. Now, this can be amazingly useful when you want to do things like bring a separate blog that's hosted somewhere else in different architecture. You want to bring that into your main structure for your website. So say you want, mysite.com/ this directory, but you want it to pull in all the content from, myblog.com. Now, previously we would have used reverse proxies to do this kind of work, and that was quite complex and it involved, it wasn't an easy operation. We now have this function called a forward rewrite, which allows me to pull in this content on even by page basis on a very granular way into the main structure of my site. So that's a kind of common problem that you find, that people want to consolidate content into the same sort of structure, and that's something that the Edge can solve pretty much immediately.
Hmm. And you were mentioning before, like earlier on in the conversation, the emergence of AI and how everybody's talking about AI these days and how it's going to impact SEO. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think AI is very exciting for the SEO industry, and that's because we always wanted to have the capability to produce content, produce good content. So it's given everybody their own content writing team. I think this is one function of AI. Obviously, there's lots more in terms of computation and using data. But if we just take, I think the bit that's got most people excited is the fact they can produce lots of content. I think that's great, but we need to think about the quality of that content. I don't think that Google is inherently against AI. I think they understand that if the outcome is better, then there's nothing wrong with AI generated content. And certainly the tests that I've been doing, or we've been doing at Talk, we've often produced content that's better than content that can be written by non-native English speakers. Grammatically, it's usually pretty good. It also can bring in data, the custom data from the client to enrich that content and make it genuinely useful for users. So you can produce AI content that's a very high level, and Edge comes into this because Edge can be a way of actually deploying this content, because you may want to bring that content in and inject it into pages without having to rewrite the CMS to handle that on each template. So it's something that we've done a lot of work on, but I think it's not a sort of silver bullet. I think to make good AI content, you need a lot of effort in terms of interacting with that data, make it unique, making sure the quality is good, and effectively you're going to spend the same kind of effort that you did initially with content. It's not any less effort, but the outcome is going to be a lot better, the output, and that's generally what I found. So I don't think it's the silver bullet in terms of saving money for clients. It's going to it's still going to involve the same cost and effort, but the outcome is going to be a lot better.
That's really interesting that you're mentioning that, because there seems to be like a field of people thinking that AI is going to be the end of um, the whole content creation, and everybody, like all the content writers, are going to be replaced by AI machines. And there's other people saying, this is not going to happen, and we
Yeah, I
will
don't.
still need
Yeah,
human input.
you do, and I think it changes content creators from maybe being a creator to being an editor. That's the difference. So every writer can become an editor in chief, and they can be handling the direction of the content, dealing with the copy, dealing with improving the quality of it. So I think it becomes a tool that content creators will learn to use to make their output even better. A good example, I was speaking to a content creator I know very well, who works for a news creator, and they gave me the example of AI content being used for sports reports. So they will come into the office in the morning, and the AI will have created the draft for the match, and it knows, in a football match, who scored which goal. They know the player, they know at what time it was scored. So they have the basics, they have the information, and it can bring in all of this into a frame. But then the editor creates the feeling and the passion and the actual, and they craft something out of that. And I think that's really where AI comes in. It becomes a base layer, a tool that content creators use, rather than something that sort of makes them redundant.
Do you think like the emergence of AI is going to be one of the biggest challenges that the SEO industry faces in the next 5-10 years?
I don't think it's. I thought initially it was going to be quite a challenge for Google, because Google has probably their one of their largest challenges at the moment is capacity. The web is growing exponentially. I've seen this as well from my time at Vodafone in terms of the data that is used by consumers on a weekly basis. We are constantly pushing the limits in terms of getting to 4G, getting to 5G, pushing the limits of all of the machines, the metal we have running these systems. So capacity is becoming the big issue really for companies like Google. And when you have AI that has the ability to generate a book at a push of a button, that's quite a scary concept, I imagine, for many of the sort of capacity engineers at large search engines. So I thought initially this was going to be something they were very worried about, but they seem to have been quite good, I would say, at working out where the quality line comes. And I don't think that's because they're necessarily going to clamp down on AI. They're going to really clamp down on quality. And this is why I think a good approach to AI is to think about it increasing your quality. So I would be very worried for companies that are using AI to replace all their writers and generating something that may be cheaper, but it will be of lower quality. And I think they're the companies that will find that this sort of that change hasn't been particularly good for them. And I think that's why I always urge caution, especially for larger brands, not to think of AI as a cost-cutting mechanism.
Going back to that, yeah, like that's one of the main things that I've heard. Some people are going to try to cut down and do this sort of stuff. Which is, in your opinion, like one of the worst things in the industry?
The worst thing in the industry is this relentless race to the bottom. Absolutely, it's the worst thing for this industry. We are providing so much value for companies, and I find that this push to the bottom, which I understand, and I feel sympathetic towards agencies having to go in that direction. I do get it. I've worked in big agency myself, but I feel like we've not put enough emphasis on the value of what we're doing within organic. And I think taking a step back and really thinking about that, especially when you're alongside the other channels that are available to a company, I think would allow us to revalue some of the work we do. Because the problem is when we when we have this race to the bottom, the things drop out of that that we can no longer do. We can no longer spend the time planning. We can no longer spend the time strategizing, which is what we need to do. That's why consultants do so well, because we come in and we're paid to plan, we're paid to strategize. When you come in from an agency, you're expected just to deliver.
Yeah.
And this is a problem because where does the planning, where does the time come in? It's all deliverables. So yeah, I think it should be an effort to really bring back the value into what we do, because I've seen that get lost by the agencies and get picked up by the consultancies. And if I was an agency owner, I'd be looking very carefully to see why the consultancies are picking up this kind of work and why they're not, and why the agencies aren't able to or struggle to. I'm probably a bit harsh on agencies.
No, but it's a fair comment. Like, do you think that is because SEO is still not overall being valued as other marketing channels are?
No, but I think it is within the right circles, and certainly I've been working as a consultant now for the best part of 10, 11 years. And that I talk to CEOs, CTOs, and SEO is valued, but it has to be presented in the right framework. And that's not as a deliverable, which maybe we managed to get 15 sites to link to us. That's not the framing that implies value. The value comes from the strategy and the planning that you put around it to show the value that you're bringing to their users, the way that you're engaging users at different points in the consumer journey, how you're benefiting other channels, how you're benefiting their call to actions, how you're benefiting reducing costs on call centers. This is SEO is kind of the glue that works between all these different other channels. But you need to be able to convey that in a way that's meaningful to senior people in these companies. And I think SEO aims too low at the moment. So again, why it's focused on deliverables. So and if your deliverables are, we created 3 pieces of content and we created 15 links, that's not positioning it in a way that's going to get value.
Because what's the result of that? What are you achieving by doing that?
Yeah, it's kind of self-defeating, really, and that's not entirely the agency's fault. That's because you have people who then demand these deliverables from the SEO team. So it's a self-fulfilling circle. But generally the consultancies come in at that point and they say, let's take a step back. Now, what are your pain points? And that's not something that an agency does. An agency comes in and says, we have a link building team, we have a content producing team, we have these set products. A consultancy comes in and says, what are your pain points? What are causing you trouble? And the client will say to you, well, look, we want to sell more iPhones, for example. So you can come up with a much higher level strategy around that.
By asking the right questions, you're able to provide the right solutions, or actually a way into achieving the right solutions.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is what paid solutions often do much better than SEO, that they are able to talk in these kind of figures, even though they are delivering something very, it's a deliverable, but they're able to talk in campaign terms. And I think that's what SEO can do, but it doesn't as often as it should do. And then if it spoke in those if it aligned its goals with the goals of senior people in those organizations, they would be able to charge much more.
Yeah.
And in turn kind of enable these things to happen. But I think this is a learning piece that the SEO industry is going through. I think they've gone through a period of this kind of race to the bottom, and I think now they need to work out how to regain some of that ground from the consultants. And we're seeing this as well amongst the traditional consultancies. When we look at Accenture, so Accenture Digital, they're not just advising on digital transformation anymore. They're coming in and helping direct campaigns, and then they're employing or directing the agencies. McKinsey Digital, they've also realized this. So, and I spent a long time working with those consultancies. I spent several years working with NTT Data, which is one of the largest global consultancies. So I've kind of been outside the SEO industry and worked in a completely different consultancy industry, and got a chance to look in and see how that dynamic works. But yeah, that's something that a lot of the agencies need to have more understanding about and regain ground in that.
No, that's fascinating. And looking back at your career, like, what would you say is your proudest industry achievement?
Oh, my proudest industry achievement is always a thing I did last week. I don't think I think I'm most proud of what I'm doing at the moment at Talk, to be honest. I think it's this is the third time I've set up an agency, and I think I can honestly say that the first 2 times I wasn't very successful. Admittedly, setting up an agency in Russia is probably quite challenging, but I've learned a lot of things when things didn't go well, and hopefully I've learned from those mistakes. And I think now coming into Talk, I think one of the proudest things things I'm proud about is I'm supporting and providing a great life for everyone who's working in Talk, and I'm really proud of the way that we're structuring ourselves in a way that's good for clients and good for the people working in Talk. And I think that's kind of what I would like to be most proud about.
Oh, that's lovely. And now circling back and going to your talk in Barbados, is it going to be your first time in Barbados?
It will be my first time in Barbados. I'm absolutely looking forward to it. I've struggled with my wife a little bit. She's I've got to bring her along because apparently she doesn't believe that this is actually a work conference. So she will divorce me if I don't.
If you don't bring her.
Join me. Yeah.
And what can people expect from your talk?
I make my talks very practical. I really want to teach everyone who's there. So I'm very excited about Edge. You can probably tell I'm a massive advocate of this new technology. I really want people to understand what it can do for them right now and give them the tools they need to go out and utilize this straight away. So yeah, expect a very practical talk. I'll answer questions. We'll probably have a lot of some material that we can't publicize. We'll try and publicize everything we can. But you've got a chance coming to Barbados SEO to ask me those kind of more difficult, in-depth questions, even outside of the talk. So I'd say it's quite, if you want to understand this new technology, this would be a very useful thing to come to. I think personally within Talk, we're the third largest compute user now globally for Fastly. I think I've been told that. So we're picking up a lot of experience really in this area, and I'll be very happy to share that with the attendees. Yeah,
that's cool. I was going to mention the fact that because the conference is sort of like small and intimate, people are going to, it's going to be easier for the attendees to get to talk to you and ask you questions even after, before, or in between talks and stuff like that, because of the intimate nature of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be very happy to show you kind of what's worked, what hasn't worked, and give you all the advice that you need really to get Edge Compute working for you.
Oh, that sounds amazing. So I think like we reached the end of this talk. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, Nick. It's been amazing. And, I have no clue about Edge solutions, so I'm very much looking forward to like hearing you speak. So yeah, thank you very much.
That's been a pleasure. Thank you, Patricia. Yep.
Thank you.